are all in on AI supply chain resiliency and maybe managing to ensure that China doesn't own it all. How does this particular Tennessee smelter speak to that initiative?
Well, Caroline, it's great to be with you, and it's great to be on your show. So during my confirmation hearing back in June, the Senate asked for a strategy, and the president's national security strategy gave them one. And every day, the State Department is wasting no time to give them results. Our economic security strategy is based on 4 pillars. We're rebalancing trade, and Secretary Lutnick, Secretary Besson, and Ambassador Greer have done a stellar job at renegotiating decades-long trade deals. We're stabilizing conflict zones. We're reindustrializing America to make sure that we maintain our competitive edge, and the deal with Korea Zinc is a major milestone in that effort. And ultimately, we're also securing our supply chains. Pax Silica provides the framework that allows us to work with our allies and partners to make sure that we can secure our supply chains in order to lead in the industries of the future. And we're very proud of the rollout of Korea Zinc. The Department of War was an instrumental pillar to the deal. And ultimately, this is the kind of whole-of-government approach that we're looking at advancing to advance our interests.
Talk about that approach. In this case, it feels very much more like public-private partnership on a particular smelter. JP Morgan's in there as well with its initiative. On other cases, you're actually taking stakes in companies that aren't even American. How do you see it being fit for purpose on each individual way?
So one of the reasons that we started the Pax Silica initiative is because the global supply chain is global. We wanted to get together with the Koreans, the Japanese, the Australians, the Brits, the Singaporeans, and Israel, because all of these companies bring unique attributes to the table. And ultimately, the deal with Korea Zinc illustrates the competitive advantages that some of our key partners and allies have in these areas. Ultimately, what we realize is that there is a new economic security consensus that's emerging across our allied space, that economic security is national security and economic policy is downstream of national security. And our allies are on the same page that this is not a line item, it's a prerequisite for national survival. So through Pax Silica, we're cooperating on economic security practices, as well as opening new channels for co-investment in fabs, data centers, as well as refining projects like the Korea Zinc refining facility in Clarksville. Ultimately, we want to pool together and leverage different investment vehicles that our respective governments have. In the US, we have the Development Finance Corporation, we have the Department of War, the Office of Strategic Capital. There are so many resources at our disposal. And most importantly, we have the world's best corporate ecosystem and innovation ecosystem. And this is where collaboration between allies, as well as between the public sector and the private sector, can really make a difference.
When stakes are taken, for example, we're looking at a graphic showing $400 million for 15% of MP Materials, some might say this isn't very pro-capitalism. How do you speak to that?
It's an investment in America. Ultimately, the Department of War needs various minerals in order to make sure that we have the best arsenal to deter our adversaries and maintain our peace through strength policy. It is in the preamble of our Constitution that it is a fundamental purpose of the U.S. government to provide for the common defense. And so the Department of War needs weapons to do that. In order to get the weapons that it needs to be able to have an ecosystem of suppliers that are reliable in times of peace as well as in times of war. And ultimately, the Department of War has demonstrated its commitment in order to use every tool in its toolbox in order to make sure that we actually have an ecosystem here in the US that can guarantee our critical supplies for minerals, especially in a wartime. So we're very proud of this project, and it's going to have dramatic spillovers on the commercial sector as well.
Spillovers are on commercial sector. How much could we spill over in more countries joining? We're looking at the inaugural Pax Silica summit, the allies that joined, but some were guests as well. Taiwan, OECD, Europe in particular. Will more join?
So we do expect a number of them to join in the first half of next year. We're talking to a number of countries right now, including India, among several others. India is host to the AI Impact Forum next year. We're very much looking forward to participating in that. Ultimately, we want to make sure that the group stays focused on solving very specific challenges of supply chain security. So we approach every single partner very much through the lens of which companies are they able to bring to bear to the table in order to solve concrete challenges. That is very much our model. We expect to pursue that model, but we do realize that the meeting that we held was a first step. It's not a final destination. Now we're shifting towards implementation, and we will likely add more new partners early next year.
Many are watchful as to how much the EU will get involved. One key company in the EU is ASML. We spoke with the CEO recently about his own supply chain, US, China. Just take a minute to listen to this, Jacob, if you will.
Most probably, we need to develop a much bigger supply chain, so maybe not depending fully on China. I don't know how much we have in Europe, so that's also why it's important to keep some of those markets open. I think you're right. The interdependencies we have between, us, China, the US, is being reminded to us every day.
Now, we understand that China has just started allowing rare earth export licenses to certain European companies in particular, and the top trade negotiator yesterday told us that things were looking up. Is it looking up for the US as well with rare earth metals, for example?
So we're seeing a very interesting debate take place in Europe, and Europe fundamentally has a choice between the loss of identity, the loss of industry, and the loss of borders, or they can choose regulatory simplification, energy abundance, and fair and reciprocal trade. There is an effort within the EU context aimed at regulatory simplification, which we find very encouraging. I will say we also find it very, very encouraging that there is a growing economic security consensus between the United States and Europe. And one of the examples of that is the fact that the G7 theme next year is global imbalances. And, as you know, the French government is not referring to weather patterns when they're talking about imbalances. It's referring to the fact that Europe is awakening to the economic security challenges of industrial over-reliance and decades of unfair practices. And we welcome that, and we want to work with them on that. The Netherlands did participate in the Pax Silica summit. We want to deepen that collaboration. And ultimately, we view Europe as an important partner, and we want to work with them as they, are currently working through to solve their economic and supply chain challenges as well.
I mean, Jacob, many would say that Europe felt that your national security strategy, as was put out on December the 5th, was a real wake-up call. In fact, I think they saw it as a significant reorientation of US and its relationship with Europe. They felt sort of under threat and specifically criticized. How did you take on board that reaction? I think there is even the word used, civilization erasure, as you thought to tackle immigration or put your views forward on culture wars in Europe.
Sure. So the president's national security strategy was not an insult. It was a diagnosis. It was the fact that he laid out in clear and simple terms that there is a turning point that Europe is facing. It can choose manage decline, bureaucratic paralysis, or it can choose rejuvenation, secure borders, energy abundance, and fair and reciprocal trade. We have our disagreements with Europe on how they approach the technology sector. We think that they are way too heavy-handed from a bureaucratic and regulatory standpoint over cutting-edge technologies. We believe ultimately that when they take steps to go after our companies, they actually end up hurting themselves by deteriorating the investment climate in Europe. With that being said, we do have notable areas of convergence, including on economic security. They are now experiencing the economic security and supply chain challenges that we are experiencing. They are having healthy, open debates about supply chain security. And the theme of the G7 highlights where their mind is at. And so we do see a healthy terrain to engage with them on supply chain security. We hope to seize that opportunity and actually expand it if and where possible.
That term diagnosis, Jacob, you've been diagnosis for a long time, diagnosing the relationship, the security risks of US and China. You've been writing about it. You've been a public servant around it. You've done private company roles around it. What do you think the relationship with the US and China should be like? Because at the moment, the diagnosis is we're still dependent on 90% of our rare earth metals from there.
Well, ultimately, the president's been clear that we want to have a constructive, stable, and positive relationship with China. And at this, we're going to do that all the while standing up for America and putting America first. And so he delivered a landmark speech back in July on winning the AI race. Our policy is we want to win the AI race because we want to put America first. And so we're never going to apologize or back down from defending American interests. We believe that winning the race has two main vectors. We need to have the best innovation and we need to have the most diffusion. And ultimately, we are pursuing a two-track approach to make sure that we expand our compute capacity here at home to have the best models in the world, all the while exporting our technology onto the world market to make sure that the world's developers are all building on the American stack.